The Upside-Down Africa. Third Worldism, an invention attributed to Stalin, has ended up becoming, and continues to be, one of the major sources of authority for the revolutionary spirit. It has instilled an indelible sense of guilt into the Western civilization's soul, reaping various kinds of moral, political, and financial gains from it. Endorsed by international organizations, fueled by billionaire foundations and several governments, promoted by tireless talkers like Noam Chomsky and Edward Said, and established as official doctrine by the entire major media in Europe and the USA, this ideology crafted from opportunistic mendacity has managed to penetrate the public opinion so deeply that any attempt to question it, even in a neutral and academic tone, is now seen as unequivocal proof of racism. One of its main dogmas is precisely the accusation of racism, broadly hurled at all of Christendom by countless armies of activist intellectuals, and in recent decades, by all spokespersons of radical Islamism. According to this doctrine, imbued with the belief in the inherent inferiority of blacks, the European white man would have been the quintessential slaveholder, responsible for decimating the African population and funding the Industrial Revolution that enriched the West. Everything in this theory is a lie. Starting with the inversion of chronology. Europeans only arrived in Africa around the mid-15th century. Long before that, racist contempt for blacks was commonplace among the Arabs, as evidenced by the words of some of their prominent intellectuals. I extract these examples from Bernard Lugan's book, Africa, The Right History. Ibn Khaldun, the Tunisian historian, 1332–1406, asserts that if the Sudanese are characterized by frivolity and inconstancy, in regions further south, we find only people closer to animals than to intelligent beings. They live in wild places and caves, eat herbs and raw grains, and sometimes even eat each other. We cannot consider them human beings. The Egyptian writer Al-Abshihai, 1388–1446, asks, what could be more vile, more wicked than black slaves? As for mulattoes, be kind to them every day of your life in every possible way, and they will not show you the slightest gratitude, it will be as if you have done nothing for them. The better you treat them, the more insolent they will become. But if you mistreat them, they will show humility and submission. Ibn Batlan, recognizing that black women have a sense of rhythm and resilience for hard work, observes, but you cannot derive any pleasure from them due to the odor of their armpits and the coarseness of their bodies. In contrast, theories asserting the racial inferiority of blacks did not spread in educated Europe until the 18th century, see Eric Voegelin, The History of the Race Idea. In other words, educated Europeans became racists almost at the same time that the slave trade was declining and abolitionist movements were emerging, with no equivalent in the Arab world, given that slavery is permitted by Islamic religion and no one would dare confront a Quranic command. Anti-black racism is purely an Arab creation, and in Europe, it did not contribute in any way to fostering the slave trade. Another characteristic inversion of historical time is the universally accepted stereotype of the European colonialist invading Africa with a crucifix in hand, determined to impose the religion of the whites on defenseless populations. Christianity was the religion of blacks long before it was the religion of European whites. There were churches in Ethiopia at a time when the English were still pagan barbarians. More than 1,000 years before the Great Voyages, the oldest Christian kingdoms in the world were in Africa, some quite cultured and prosperous. It was the Arabs who destroyed them, in their zeal to forcibly Islamize everything. A significant portion of the region stretching from Morocco, Libya, Algeria, and Egypt to Sudan and Ethiopia was Christian until Muslims arrived, burned churches, and sold Christians as slaves. 4/5 of the prestige of Third World legends rest on the concealment of this fact. In addition to the inversion of chronology, as is invariably the case in revolutionary discourse, there is the inversion of moral responsibility. Needless to say, the verbal fury of today's Arabs against the enslaving Christian civilization is pure projected guilt. If Europeans brought between 12 and 15 million slaves to the Americas, Arab merchants took approximately the same number to Islamic countries, with three differences. 1. They were the ones who captured them, something Europeans never did except in Angola and briefly. 2. They castrated at least 10% of them, a practice unknown among European traffickers. 3. They continued the slave trade into the 20th century. Arab slavery was a forbidden topic for a long time, but the taboo can be considered broken since the prestigious French publisher Gallimard agreed to publish the excellent study by African author Tidiane Ndiaye, Le Génocide Voile, 2008, which I will comment on another day. But it's not just the Arabs who have hidden guilt behind an indignant accusation discourse. Slavery was a common practice in Africa long before their arrival, and today it is known that most of the captured slaves were sold in the domestic market, with only a smaller portion being taken abroad. When apologists for African civilization praise the great black kingdoms of the past, they often omit mentioning that these states, especially Benin, Dahomey, Ashanti, and Oyo, owed their prosperity to the slave trade, upon which their economy relied entirely. Especially the Oyo kingdom, writes Lugan, developed a remarkable military imperialism from the late 17th century, seeking to reach the ocean to establish direct contact with the whites. Even before that, Oyo's military strength, especially its cavalry, allowed for a plentiful harvest of slaves, which it captured in the south among the Yoruba and in the north among the Bariba and Nupe. Traditionally, numerous captives became slaves within the victor's society. With the appearance of European trade, a portion, but only a portion, was directed towards the coast. In a future article, I will show more of the astonishing inversions that the Third World discourse operates in the history of African slavery. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. This text was taken from the article, The Upside Down Africa, written by philosopher Olavo de Carvalho in 2009.